are living in the 21st century, practically the post-futuristic age, with everything we ever thought the future might be and more, in the context of culture and the context of music. And in that context of music, music has been given to us mainly through the prism of pop culture. A lot of the music we get is music that has been industrialized to fit into the context of our everyday lives as we kind of grind through our jobs. And I mention this because music in its classical historical context was something people did for spiritual reasons, ritualistic reasons, mythological reasons, but it morphed into this consumer-driven tool. Then now the very artists who make the music are in a position where they take that ritualistic energy and a lot of the time sacrifice it for market value. I want to talk about that using Landmarque, the rapper, a member of the very well-known Christian hip-hop group Last Day's Fam. Now, it's important that I mention the Christian aspect because rappers with an evangelical agenda have never been famous amongst heads as a whole. But Last Day's Fam was able to bridge over that pulpit and get into a world of everyday listeners, purely, I argue, through that one individual, Landmarque. Landmarque is a husky voiced illustrator of epic imagery. He's warm, he's careful, he's detailed, he's sensitive. He booms with the energy of a preacher, but with none of the self-righteousness. His sincerity of giving a humanistic, prophetic echoing of what is going on in society has been something that I think all who know him love him for. So here he is giving us a 3-part class really on his views and on his opinions on the world in general, but also glimpses into his own life. The interesting thing about how he does this is that he does this through, again, a Christian-centric lens. The 7 deadly sins, for those that might know, were a set of principles extracted not in the Bible, but by scholars of the Bible, monks who were known as the Church Fathers, a group of monks who historically were active around Africa and Asia, who took the bases of Christianity and were interpolating that further into the context of their own cultures, influenced by Platonism and Greek thinking and all kinds of thinking. These were men who took the fundamentals of Christianity and innovated. These were Christian innovators, as Kanye West would say. These were people who took the basis of Ubukrestu and said, what could it possibly be? And from that, we have the 7 deadly sins, particularly fine-tuned by a man called Viwe Joka, who took what is essentially the ethics of the Bible and summed it up into 7 principles. And these 7 principles, avarice, greed, so forth and so forth, basically highlighted what we as people should be careful of in our spiritual path towards trying to be the most balanced and wholesome version of ourselves we can be. So enter Landmarque. He takes that very same context. He evolves from the premise of where he started as a member of the Last Day's Fam. But I feel like if we've been paying attention to the dialogue that Landmarque has been having with his fans in social media over the past years, his own faith has evolved. His own perception to the world has gone from maybe a classical evangelical Christian to being one which is a little bit more eclectic, one which is a little bit more quote-unquote worldlier. And from being more worldlier, from being more grounded, coming from a kind of heavenly pedestal, which is what Christianity kind of is characterized by, speaking from the point of having the highest view, but coming down. Landmarque comes down for us from heaven, like Christ, and speaks to us as a man, as a person, as nothing but somebody giving us their own experiences. Landmarque delivers a 3-part story influenced by these 7 deadly sins. He starts us off with envy and avarice, with the feeling of wanting what's not yours, but channeling that into aspiration and desire, of looking at the world and your aspirations in the context of your own, I don't know, personal ambition. Then he goes into pride and wrath. He questions the solemn, reflective, moral unhinging of a person, and how that can turn into either an angry, aggressive pulse, or it can turn into something more wholesome that we can affirm to protect ourselves and those we love. Then he ends it off by gluttony, sloth, and lust, which really, even sonically, kind of captures that edgy approach. He takes us into the limits of our desires, his desires. He takes us into the vices and the virtues. So really, this is a philosophical discourse. This is somebody going into morals, going into values, and going into the assumptions that underpin them. And he does this so skillfully. The thing about Landmarque is that he is by far one of this country's most valuable lyricists. And I want to talk about an important conversation. Hip-hop heads are people who are different in this particular way from all other music listeners. Hip-hop is a music which was driven, is a culture which was driven through the lens of rap music. And rap taught us to listen to lyrics. Rap is rhythm and poetry. And from this inclination of loving the journey of listening and dissecting lyrics, we as hip-hop heads become different from all other music listeners in this way. We've been fine-tuned to really honing in on what someone is saying, and that is not a musical quality. Music, as famously as Pharrell Williams once said in an interview, good music is not supposed to make you think. And I agree with that. Good music is the immediate tie of bonding with the sound, the arrangement of sound, as it connects with human emotions. That's why you can have music without vocals. But rap music isn't always music. There are times where it is more rap than it is music. There are times where we have to understand that rap as an art form can fit into the context of music, meaning there is music which is accompanied by rap. There are songs you can hear and feel like, whoa, this is a great musical piece delivered through the vocal projection of a rapper. The music drives it, the rapper accompanies it. Then there is spoken word art or sound poetry. Something driven by the voice, driven by the poetry, where the music becomes the backdrop, illustrating or rather accentuating what the poet is saying. And the latter is something a lot of people do not acknowledge, because we tend to judge artists who really aren't making music but are making sound poetry, are making spoken word art. We tend to judge them through a musical lens, because pop music is mostly that kind of context. And Landmarque does something more alternative. He gives us lyrics for the literary emphasis of what is being said. He really is an author. He really is a writer. And the music happens to be something he uses as a tool to bridge that into that market. So if we want to appreciate these 3 projects in their proper context, we need to understand that this isn't music. This is spoken word art. This is sound poetry. An example of artists in this nature or ilk are artists such as Aesop Rock, Elucid, Earl Sweatshirt, Milo or Rap Ferreira, the Iaptus group in South Africa, the Tabs, Robo the Technician, Peace to Robo, Eugen Blackrock. These are artists whose abstract lyricism really is meant to convey the forefront pulse of what the piece is about. And the music kind of becomes an overture to the stories that are being told. And if we understand how to categorize these artists, we come closer to understanding how to appreciate them. We come a little bit closer to understanding what their intention is. Then we can truly know how to value them. So how do I value these 3-piece Lesson by Landmarque? It's definitely a 10 out of 10. It's a perfect representation of a man who's grown from the aisles of the church, navigated his way into the cypher, grown as an MC, become a consummate performer within the hip-hop space, evolved in an era of internet buzz, and found his place and his niche, giving us what only he could do best. You've gotta love Landmarque's focused, clear, self-aware approach. He knows what he is, he knows what he isn't, and without detailing how he does it through this album, what it is a consistent play-by-play narrative of his own personal life, of our current era, commentary on everything from technology to his growth as an artist, to sexual innuendos, to trends, to controversy, to absolutely everything you could think about under the sun, as only Landmarque could do it. So for me, these projects, though they may be 3, constitute one body of work. And in the parallel of the 7 deadly sins, they become Landmarque's magnum opus. They become his Bible, him giving it to us to read, to understand, and to possibly find a moral compass from it and take a little bit of advice. And I say Landmarque is one of the most important rappers of our era. He's given us a 10 out of 10 project, and this is one we need to appreciate. Check it out if you are a lover of sound poetry, of spoken word art, and you are one of those who feel like the lyricism takes foreground. It is what it is.